Hello, I'm Robert Gammon Ross, and you're watching my channel, Bob's Gammon, where I give a proper look over video games and their design. If you find this interesting or enjoyable, please do me the liberty of subscribing, liking, and commenting on this video, as it helps me continue to do this. A couple of weeks ago, I released my first full deep dive retrospective into the game Heart of Darkness that was released in 1998. When writing and researching that retrospective, I was unable to include some of the random trivia, and I also had a couple of questions regarding this 1998 cult classic. This video is there to answer these questions and give you them odd facts that didn't quite fit into the full retrospective. The first question I got was, what would you want in a film adaptation? I was asked what I'd like to see in this Heart of Darkness film, if it was made, because obviously there was rumours that I included in the retrospective of a film being made, perhaps by Steven Spielberg. The person who asked this question also asked if there was any Wizards of Oz stuff that I kind of hinted at, that I specifically saw in the game. So that was Brock Booth 630. Firstly, I do struggle with films. This might be due to ADHD, but I will answer the question in kind of realistic terms of what I would like to see if I was to watch one. The first thing I probably would like to see, and the most important thing I'd like to see, is a similar tone, and that is that kind of return to slightly darker and ominous children's films where there's still that overwhelming idea of hope and like an adventure and you're going off, but there is that kind of real danger in the background. It's not all just fun and games. There is a reason why this adventure's going on, and that was the kind of thing I was trying to hint at what you kind of see in the game, such as what you would see in them like 80s and 90s film like The Goonies and the one that I mentioned, which was Return to Oz. I don't think I saw anything specifically Wizard of Oz in the game. Perhaps maybe the flying monkeys being similar to like the flying bastards that attack you in the game. So when I get to a similar tone, I think a good example of how that tone's not really there anymore is the film Jumanji, the 90s version compared to what we kind of got now, or like quite a few years back now actually, in them kind of modern adaptations, where the Jumanji is a game that they go into. And the films aren't bad, the new ones, but they're so different in tone that they're fun and jokey, and there's no real idea of danger and like real ominous like ideas are going on. So I would like a return to that more, there's danger here, there's real stakes, and people might even die. And I think if you're going to call a film Heart of Darkness, even if it is for kids, you need that darkness in it. I think I'd also like the ending to be a bit more fleshed out. The ending of the game kind of happens very quickly. Everything comes full force straight away, and there's not really any tying up of loose ends that you kind of want. Andy kind of just wakes up and is not in the place anymore. Whiskey kind of appears out of nowhere. You don't really save him. You don't really work out who the Heart of Darkness is / the Master is. The servant gets finished off screen and taken by the Amigos. There's no real conclusion to his kind of arc. So I'd like that, I think. And yeah, an exploration of their characters, especially the servant and the master. I think they were really underutilized. When we're talking about that film adaptation, we also, in that comment thread, I was discussing how close that film came to be. I decided to actually look into this and do the research. I tried to research it when I was first looking into the retrospective and doing the development, and I couldn't really find it. And I wasn't going to spend a lot of time looking into something that was kind of auxiliary to the game, especially if it's not easy to find. Like, obviously I did deep dives into the development, but not so much this film in particular. I looked at the IGN review because it kind of talks and hints about it. So in 1998, when the game was released, they said that Andy takes off to find a dog, and the game launches him into a world that is so creative and wonderful, Steven Spielberg wanted to make a movie out of it. Yes, yet another story that has been told many times. For those interested in these stories, see the 2-part Heart of Darkness interview in the feature section. I'd actually already read both parts of the interview prior to the retrospective and while I was researching for the retrospective. And I couldn't remember this story really coming out, and being fleshed out. So I thought I would look a bit more deeper into it. Yeah, I was right. There was no information on this story. It just repeats that Spielberg claim. Spielberg wanted to make a film of it. And that's the extent to what they said, that they were interested in it. But nothing more than that. And I was struggling to find any more of that in any specific place. Brock Booth, the person who originally asked the question in the chat, did mention that DreamWorks apparently had an interest, but I couldn't find that specific mention. I wouldn't be surprised if these rumors about Steven Spielberg and DreamWorks and the like came about because there was a rumored meeting of Amazing Studio and Steven Spielberg at E3 in, I think it's 1995, it might have been 1996, wasn't 100% sure. It was hard to work out. Sega Saturn magazine is the only place that states specifically that these interactions with Spielberg happened. So we know that for a fact that Spielberg was at E3 in the 90s, quite a few of them, because he was interested in this up-and-coming medium of animation. I have a lot of speculation about this, which I think is well-founded and is based on a lot of the kind of half information that you get from a lot of these sources. And that is that the enthusiasm for Heart of Darkness wasn't necessarily as much for Heart of Darkness as it was for Amazing Studio, because they were the ones who made it and they were the ones who were showing that with a very small team and without the high-end tech that they could make really good animation. With all these animation departments opening up in film studios and creating these kind of short films at the time that were leading into longer films such as Toy Story as the first feature film, it wasn't a surprise that when they were looking at these to open these studios, that they looked at places like Amazing Studio as a team that might be able to do this kind of thing, and that they had already had a property that they were kind of working on. It made sense to kind of think about making Heart of Darkness into a film, but I think it doesn't extend beyond that because they would have been busy making Heart of Darkness at the time, and because they were quite a small studio, it might not have been seen as feasible to turn this into a full-scale project, or the fact that they haven't got any time because they're developing the game, so they can't make a full-scale project. So I don't think they were just looking for Heart of Darkness. They were looking for Amazing Studio to make Heart of Darkness. There's a couple of things, obviously, I didn't get to include in the just bits of trivia. So one of the first things is that there was apparently a Game Boy Color port that was looking to get made, but I don't think this was very likely. Amazing Studio had been exhausted with Heart of Darkness from everything that you can read, that they wanted a break from it. This news came out in 2000, so it had been 2 years since the release, so they could have been over it, or at least some of them, but I don't think there was, and obviously I think another team would have probably made it, but I don't think that Amazing Studio was in a place to license out everything, because they were looking to move on from gaming and looking more into film production, which they've gone into since. Another bit of random information is that the eclipse at the beginning of the game that takes Whiskey up, that is a annular solar eclipse, according to my wife, who is the senior planetarium astronomer at the Royal Observatory Greenwich. And I just wanted to plug her because she's amazing. And also she wanted me to include that because she was being a nerd. Okay, now let's get on to another discussion. This one actually happened in one of the shorts that covered part of the retrospective. And that part was at the Amigo tribe area, and where they go and talk to the tribal chief and ask him some questions. And there's some of the most, I would say, infamous parts of the game, at least in my opinion. And I felt that I should, discuss that a bit more, because obviously it's quite interesting enough for me to make it into a short, and also interesting enough for people to have that kind of discussion about it. A lot of this discussion revolves around one of the main discussions that revolves around Heart of Darkness, and that is the fact that in America, the NTSC version was rated by the ESRB, which is the North American rating system, as an E for everyone. The game was said to be absolutely fine for everyone, even though we know that it has a lot of brutal death animations. It includes some smoking, and it also include some tits, which we'll get onto in a minute. So Heart of Darkness was released in both America and Europe, and the European version, the PAL version, was rated by the ELSBA, which was a precursor to the modern PEGI system, which is now used across most of Europe, except for notably Germany and Salzburg, that use Unterhalten software Selbstkontrolle. The ELSBA gave Heart of Darkness a rating of 11 plus. At least that's what it says on my Heart of Darkness games, which are in very bad condition, mainly because I'm terrible at looking after things, especially when I was younger. So I got another copy because I thought the game was broken. It turns out it wasn't. It was my PS2. However, I have seen cases online of the PAL version that are given a rating of 3+. I don't know how old my original copy of Heart of Darkness is. I can't remember. So it is possible that there were earlier ratings of 3+ and it got changed to 11+. It could be that there are different language versions. However, I've got two versions of the game here at that 11+, so we can say for a fact that the game, at least for an extended period of time, was given that rating. You can't really look these things up anymore because of it being an outdated ratings board. The North American NTSC version was rated by the ESRB that still do it now, and it was given the rating E for everyone. You can find that online because obviously this board still do the ratings till today. And online it states the E for everyone rating, but also gives some warnings such as animated violence, use of alcohol, and use of tobacco. We can see that these uses of alcohol and tobacco show that the game has been engaged with to some degree because the uses come, at least narratively, halfway through the game. It's actually more baffling that they gave this game E for everyone if they have proven engagement with the game. I wasn't necessarily sure of that to begin with because I wouldn't be surprised in the 90s with the game being fairly innocuous looking that they would have just slapped an E for everyone on it and just moved on. However, it seems like they have played the game but found that the deaths were not enough to make it worse than an E for everyone. And yeah, I guess you can kind of think about that and maybe the violence isn't enough, but it does seem very weird. There's also a specific mention of the use of tobacco, which I think is quite interesting that tobacco probably now using it, even in a non-glorified way, would be seen as worse, at least maybe in Europe, that they might have slapped on, oh, maybe this isn't for everyone because it shows people smoking and maybe it shows it as a good thing to do. I'm not necessarily certain about that. What I am even less certain of is that the use of tobacco in the Amigo village was actually tobacco to begin with, because it looked more like a much more recreational drug such as, weed or something, because he pops his eye and he seems to be enjoying it far more than most people enjoy simple nicotine and tobacco and whatnot. It seems weird that that wasn't seen as drug use as well if they had watched it. Again, I'm not saying it should be. I'm saying I wouldn't imagine a game with drug use in being E for everyone. Now I'm going to get to the crux of what I was talking about in that short and in that part of the retrospective, which was the fact that this game was given an E for everyone rating in North America, despite there being a naked lady shown in a pornographic way. None of that is mentioned at all in the rating, and it seems to be glossed over completely. This boob discussion actually ended up with me down a rabbit hole about how ratings worked and what is seen as fine in both Europe and in America. And I found it quite fascinating that certain things had actually been changed. In the retrospective, I said that there was no difference that I could tell between the American NTSC version and the PAL European version. I was wrong. I found a difference, and it was all down to this discussion of boobs. And more particularly, it was about the nipples. In the American NTSC version, they have removed the nipples from the pornographic picture of the Amigo. Now, that begs the question, was this done to get it an E rating? Did they think that, it doesn't matter about all them deaths, it doesn't matter about the smoking, it doesn't matter about anything else. It just matters that they show some nipple. Apparently so. And I'm curious to whether or not this was a assumption that was made by Amazing Studio before they submitted it for rating, or if they got the rating from the ESRB and were told that they would need to remove and airbrush this nipple in order to get that E rating. One thing that I found out in a bit more of this extra research that is somewhat related to this kind of ratings discussion is that Eric Chahi did state that he was adverse to one of the death scenes in the game. And he was talking about that big bellied shadow that I found out had a name. I don't think it's said in game, but apparently it's called Methodoka. When he eats Andy, he felt that that was too far and he only did that for shock factor. It is one of the most gruesome deaths in the game, though it does have some quite potent competition in that regards. And it's quite interesting that even he thought that was too far. Anyway, that's the extent of what I have on Heart of Darkness at the moment. I do think that there is more to talk about when it comes to their nipples, but I think if it is, it would probably be in regards to a wider discussion about ratings and the extent to which things change in regions when it comes to that. I'm also doing a video essay that I've half written up about how do games implement ethics, because I think that's very interesting to me. I am also working on retrospectives for 2 games, them being the Walking Dead Telltale series and Resident Evil Outbreak, 2 games that I have a lot of fond memories with, but I think there's a lot to talk about when it comes to them as well, especially when we talk about ethics, which I have been for that other video essay. I'm also starting a new series that I'm writing at the moment called One Small Change, and that is where I look at one small change you could make to a disappointing game in order to take it from the gutter to glory. If you have any suggestions on games that I should be looking at in depth, then please do suggest them in the comments below. And any other comments about Heart of Darkness, I think I'm going to leave the discussion purely to comments unless there is something really big that comes out of them. Apart from that, please like and subscribe. I've loved all the lovely feedback I've been having, and it seems like people are enjoying my analysis of these games. And I'd love to carry on that beyond just this retrospective. So please let me know that you want to see more, because that will drive me to do more, and also hopefully drive other people to see it, and that's what you need as a creator. So I am sorry that I am barking up that tree, but you've got to. Anyway, thank you very much for watching this, and I hope it has given you that little extra bit of knowledge that you didn't have before. Have a good day, good week, good year. Love you all. Bye-bye.